the Great Deku Tree, the guardian spirit of the Koroks and the Kokiri in a number of different Zelda games. But what is the story behind these mythical characters? And how did this family of magical trees prevail for tens of thousands of years until the era of the Wild? This time, we take a deeper look at the protector of the Master Sword in Breath of the Wild. As we all know by now, the Great Deku Tree in the era of the Wild is found in the heart of the Korok Forest, an oasis of calm surrounded by the harsh and deceitful Lost Woods, which protects the vulnerable Koroks, the Great Deku Tree, and the Master Sword from outer threats. The resting pedestal of the Master Sword has, for a long time, been a well-known location for the Hyrulean royal family, and it's more than likely that it was them who placed the sword out here to keep it safe between each of Calamity Ganon's invasions. In other words, it is reasonable to believe that Link, the chosen Hylian champion, was not the first to pull the Master Sword under the Great Deku Tree's watch in order to battle the Calamity. However, as he fell in combat, he was the first to not return the Master Sword back to the Great Deku Tree, leaving a distraught Princess Zelda to claim this responsibility, prior to heading for her 100-year-long struggle against Calamity Ganon. We will get back to the Great Deku Tree's role in the era of the Wild, but before we do so, we need to ask ourselves, have we seen this particular Deku Tree in a prior Zelda title? In order to give a satisfying answer to this question, we have to go across the line back to the era of the Sky and Faron Forest, where the Kikwi inhabitants spent their days in and around a massive tree. Even though this is a likely reference to the future line of Deku trees, it is rather obvious that this tree was just symbolic, as it clearly lacked the ability to speak. As such, the first proper Great Deku Tree is found in Ocarina of Time, who was a guardian deity of the Kokiri tribe and took the future hero of Time under his protection from his dying mother during the Hyrulean Civil War. 9 or 10 years passed until Ganondorf came and demanded the Great Deku Tree to hand over the Kokiri Emerald. When he refused to oblige to this demand, the King of Thieves cursed the giant tree and subsequently led to its passing, despite Link's successful summoning and struggle to get rid of the parasite Goma. In his dying breath, the great tree granted the Kokiri Emerald to Link and ordered him to head for Princess Zelda. This marked the end of the first Deku Tree and the beginning of a new Great Deku Tree as Link departed from Saria, Mido, and the rest of the Kokiri to fulfill his destiny. In the adult timeline, upon Link pulling the Master Sword, rushed to the Forest Temple to awaken Saria as a sage and free the Kokiri Forest and the Great Deku Tree offspring from the clutches of Phantom Ganon. It was this offspring that informed the Hero of Time that he indeed was a Hylian and that he ended up among the Kokiri as a result of the Hyrulean Civil War. This alone is a clear sign that the memories and knowledge pass on among the roots of the Great Deku Trees. This is a clue that will be important when we get back to Breath of the Wild. Following Link's victory in the adult timeline, the offspring over time grew into the new Great Deku Tree, who, after Hyrule's flooding and Ganondorf's murder of the Kokiri sage Fado, decided that it was time for the Kokiri to take a less vulnerable form as Koroks, at what had become the Forest Haven. The Great Deku Tree, as the guardian and father figure of the Koroks, continued to protect the poor creatures from evil. Still, this did not prevent him from carrying out his important mission to plant trees and at least reclaim a portion of the lost land. By the time the future hero of the winds arrived at the Forest Haven, the Great Deku Tree had to be freed from a group of bothersome choo-choos and then recognized the Green Tunic, initially first mistaking him for the Hero of Time. This and the fact that he speaks ancient Hylian by mistaking Link is a clear indication that the Great Deku Tree in the era of the Great Sea is the mature Deku Tree sprout or its descendant. As previously stated, the memory of one tree likely passes on to the other through reincarnation. Moving on. In the moment when the guardian deity of the Koroks was about to initiate the annual Koroks ceremony to bestow the Pearl of Furore to Link, news broke out that the violinist Makar was missing. The great Deku Tree entrusted Link the Deku Leaf and tasked him to bring Makar safely back. When this task was accomplished, he finally handed the Pearl of Furore. Link would eventually, upon pulling the Master Sword, discover the tragic fate of the Kokiri Fado and awake Makar to the Earth Temple, where he together with Fado would restore half of the necessary power to the Master Sword. And apart from aiding the Koroks in their quest to grow new trees in the Great Sea, these are all references we have to the Kokiri, Koroks, and the Great Deku Tree in the adult timeline. This because the plot eventually moves over to New Hyrule and we don't know what remains of the future fate of the former Land of Hyrule. In the child timeline, the offspring of the Deku Tree is dead by the time of Twilight Princess, as it can be found leading to the entrance of the Forest Temple, as noted back in Vortexy Gaming's Forest Temple theory. Another possible location is Ordon Village. But who knows? Perhaps he was succeeded by a different offspring which then continued far into the future. In this case, we simply don't know. The same goes for the Downfall timeline, where there is no Deku Tree, Kokiri, or Koroks, with the exception of Holodrum and Labrina where we have the Maku trees. Did they, similar to the Gorons and Zoras, depart from Hyrule? Other obvious connections to the Great Deku Tree in Breath of the Wild is tied to the Master Sword, which is found in the Lost Woods in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds. So could an offspring of the Great Deku Tree have grown in the tree we know in Breath of the Wild? Possibly, but it would be hard to explain with Hyrule being so different by the end of the Downfall timeline. A more likely explanation is that the Great Deku Tree and the Kokiri Forest in Breath of the Wild represent a fusion between the Master Sword pedestal found in A Link Between Worlds and the Koroks and Great Deku Tree found in the Wind Waker. But wait, does this make much sense? Not at all, and maybe that was the intention. In other words, the Great Deku Tree in Breath of the Wild is definitely tied to the Great Deku Trees in Ocarina of Time, but only time will tell if it follows the Wind Waker line, the Twilight Princess line, the A Link to the Past Between Worlds line, or a combination of all three. What we might assume from all this is that the Great Deku Tree in Breath of the Wild most likely has the memory of all previous Deku Trees and is aware of the entire history of Hyrule. This source of knowledge might have been the deciding factor that he was selected to guard the Master Sword between each of the Calamity invasions and testing if the Hero of Hyrule candidate was worthy of wielding it and its full power. This was clearly shown 100 years after Zelda began her fight with Calamity Ganon, where the Koroks have sought refuge across the land and how the Great Deku Tree scolded Link when he finally reached the Korok Forest to pull the Master Sword. A final note worth bringing up is the close and warm ties Princess Zelda shares with the Deku Tree, and how he is looking forward to the day she will finally be free. And on that note, we want to thank you for watching this Zelda theory on the Great Deku Tree, the Kokiri, and the Koroks. Please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already to not miss any future Zelda theories and Breath of the Wild DLC 2 updates on the channel, which will be coming soon. We also want to thank our patrons, including Patreon royal producers Transcendent Sacred Courage and Kenyatta Ali. We hope you all have a fabulous day, and we will see you girls and guys soon.